Hey parents and coaches, are your kids using the right glove? The most important skill for youth athletes to learn is how to play proper catch. The problem is, most youth gloves are made with bad leather and are too big for small hands. They actually make it harder to play catch. That's why former Major League Baseball shortstop Kevin Smith created Cali gloves. Cali gloves are crafted from 100% Japanese kip leather and are the perfect size for kids. All Cali gloves come with palm slits, finger loops, and elastic wrist lacing that encourage proper hand placement, the right closing patterns, and give kids more confidence to go make plays. Cali gloves even allow parents to break in the glove without stretching out the fit. It's the glove Kevin wishes he had growing up, and the glove all his teammates want for their kids. Visit caligloves.com to learn more and help your kids play better catch. That's Cali Gloves, K-A-L-I gloves.com.
Welcome to this week's edition of In the Clubhouse with EMD Baseball. I'm Andy Kirikides, joined by my wonderful co-host, Keith Glasser. How we doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. We're going to cover a topic today that is a little bit less baseball related than we typically have on this podcast, but I think it's an important one to cover as it's come up in conversation multiple times over the last couple of weeks. And I think what we're going to softly title this one is Don't Judge a School by Its Acceptance Rate. What do we think of that, Coach?
I think it's great. We're back. We've had like a 2-week hiatus here. So we're back and talking dugout dish in the clubhouse.
Yeah, this one's an interesting one for me because me and you have both been involved at the highest levels of academic institutions, right? Elite engineering school, elite liberal arts colleges. And it's interesting to talk about this topic because I think that there's a little bit of a misunderstanding on the quality of the education being tied to the acceptance rate. And I understand when you start talking about these elite colleges in the country, the Ivy Leagues, Stanford, University of Chicago, schools with that kind of name recognition and that type of reputation, the acceptance rates are low. MIT, Caltech, schools of that nature, where you're talking single-digit acceptance rates. And it comes with a lot of lore, and their educations are incredible, right? The bar to get in those schools is incredibly high. But I think sometimes people are so fixated on the wrong metric when they're trying to find the best fit or the right school. And the acceptance rate can be really blinding in terms of what are you actually looking for? And are you trying to find a school because you're able to go out and say, hey, I got into a school where they only accept 10% of the people? Or are you trying to find a school that's a really good fit for you and not digging deeper past the acceptance rate and really starting to understand what a school actually offers, right? I know you have some great examples, so I'm not going to steal your thunder about specific programs at different types of schools. But I think sometimes people fixate on that acceptance rate as the metric that makes a school an elite institution. But peeling back that onion a little bit deeper, starting to understand what type of opportunities are there when they're on campus. Are there specific programs at specific schools that are incredibly well-known or have a reputation of getting kids to where they want to go when they graduate, whether it's maybe it's a nursing school, maybe it's engineering specifically. But taking a look at metrics and information that go just beyond that acceptance rate, I think is something that parents and players need to do and not get stuck on that bumper sticker, but get down to the nitty gritty of what is this degree going to do to me and does it match with what I'm looking for?
Sure. I think there's something to be said about wanting to go to and being accepted to some of these institutions. That said, just because you may not be admissible at some of them doesn't mean that you still can't go to a really good school. I coached at one of the best engineering schools in the country, and they had I want to say it was around 28% acceptance rate, but that's the entire school, right? Like, you have a business school, you have a humanities school, you have an architecture school. I would argue that it's harder to get into the engineering school and the science school than it is to get into the other three. Not that they're less of a caliber of school. It's just there's less applicants that are applying to them, and they're all strong. So the likelihood of you being admitted is a little bit higher, right? And I think this is probably the same. I don't know this for sure, but this is probably the same across a lot of the engineering schools. Like, you can't skirt the system at an RPI and get in as a business major and then show up day one and be like, hey, I want to be a nuclear engineer. Like, that's not going to happen. They're very protective of it for good reason. It's one of the best engineering schools in the country. It's the oldest technological university in the English-speaking world. For those of you that are out there who used to listen to my info sessions when I was a young buck doing admission stuff. But I think that you can find certain programs within schools that are maybe not necessarily elite, but also can lead you to where you want to go and ultimately what you want to do in life, right? Like, hey, if you want to be an engineer and you want to go work in California and you're from Maryland, like, yeah, maybe RPI and U of R and RIT and Bucknell or Lafayette, like, maybe those are all schools that you should be focused in on. But if you're a New York kid who wants to be a nurse, like, maybe Brockport or, Binghamton or Stony Brook are all great options for you because they have nursing programs that are really good. If you're not going to leave the state or you want to be a teacher, like, go to a state school. You got to be state certified anyways. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. And I think that there's, surrounding what it is that you want to do. And look, at 15, 16, 17, you don't have to know what you want to do. But if you have a pretty good idea, there's a lot of different schools out there that can get you to where you want to go. And I was a history major, right? Like, there's not a whole hell of a lot that you're going to learn at Harvard that is different from a history standpoint than I learned at Marist. Like, I will die on that hill. Like, it's history. It already happened. We're just studying it years later. There's not that much difference in it, right? Like, I could be dead wrong, but I don't think I am. Like,
they read different books there.
Apparently, but what are we doing here, right? Like, kind of a little Larry David here. Like, it's kind of all the same, right? And I think that in some respects, like, it holds true in a lot of things, right? Like, I could get behind, engineering and science and some of those things of being on, depending on whether or not with what you want to do, right? Do you want to be a science teacher? Do you want to do research? Do you want, like, those types of things move the needle. If you want to go to an elite, like RPI has research. If you want to do research as an undergrad, it's a great place for you to go to. And if that's what you want to do, you should research schools that have the ability for undergraduates to legitimately get hands-on research, because some say that they do, but it's limited. Other times it's just going to be graduate students. So, you want to look into that stuff. But I don't know. I wasn't a business major. I think that there's a handful of schools out there that, are a step above the rest. But I would probably argue that your business degree from Marist isn't all that much different than some of the other NESCAC, business degrees that are out there. You majored in it. You have 2 MBAs, and you also work at a pretty good institution, if you will. Like, you're doing pretty well for yourself with a Marist degree. I mean, I think it's what you make of your degree and what you're going to do when you get out of college and what your real life experiences are going to be. I would argue that you're probably going to want to look more for schools, especially in today's world, where you're going to get some real life, real world experience as an undergrad that prep you for what you're going to do upon graduation. And I think that it's a little bit It's a little bit easier as an athlete, regardless of the sport you play. In my experience, the athletes are the ones that are sought after coming out of college because they have the ability to work within a team. They have the ability to time management. They can handle adversity. They know how to manage all of this stuff. Not to say that people who don't play sports don't, but generally speaking, the kids who have been able to do it for 4 years at a collegiate level are probably a little bit further along. I spent 10 years at RPI. I had two guys who didn't have a job by graduation. They both had multiple offers. Like, it's a lot of guys that had jobs well before they graduated. They're sought after human beings, and that's not just baseball. That's women's lacrosse and soccer and swimming and diving and football, and it's everybody who's there, right? So I think that there's more to it than just kind of looking at the acceptance rate and saying like, hey, this is an elite school, this is where I want to go, this will set me up. Like, yeah, you could go there and, what happens if you go to that school and you knock down a 2.2? Like, are you going to be hireable in the workplace? What if you went to a school that was a step down and got a 3.8? Are you more hireable then? What's the difference? So I just think that there's more to it than just the acceptance rate and what ultimately it is that you want to do, because you can find a lot of these schools, that have your major or area of study that you're interested in, research it on the interwebs and see where those students have gone. Like, shoot an email to admissions or shoot an email to the School of Business at Marist and be like, hey, where are graduates getting hired? They have the list. They'll tell you. They're very proud of it, right? So I think that there's, I think this kind of misnomer that you should go to an elite academic school. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to foo-foo that idea. I think it's a great idea if that's what you aspire to do, but I think there's, you can also view it through the lens of like, how is this degree going to be able to get me to ultimately where it is I want to go, right? And look, you could go to a school and you could crush it academically and go get your master's somewhere at a maybe more prestigious school than you were at. It doesn't diminish your undergraduate degree. You belong there. You got in. You have that master's degree or MBA, whatever it might be, from Columbia, right? Like, you got there. You could be Marist Columbia. It doesn't mean you're less smart than the person who went somewhere else. So I just like, it's a weird kind of realm for me, I think sometimes, and I probably talk too much about it, but, admittedly, I was not the best student when I was in college, nor was I in high school, but I got by. I did pretty good. I graduated with a 3.6. Come on. It's history, read some books, write some papers, give some presentations. Next thing you know, you're doing pretty good. But I think that it ultimately you're going to get out of it what you put in, right? And I think that's the case at all of these schools. Like, you're going to get out what you put in. Are you going to get your ass kicked academically at some of these schools? Absolutely you are. But again, you're going to get out what you put in. If you're just going to put in minimal effort, you're going to find yourself with minimal grades and, be flirting with even being eligible. Right. So, those are things that you want to keep in mind too. Is this ultimately what, because you want to go play baseball or lacrosse or football or whatever, right? Like, there's a GPA you're going to have to maintain in order to be able to participate in said program. And if that's important to you, then you're probably going to want to make sure that you're going to be able to do well academically so that you're not continually fighting an uphill fight for 4 years just to graduate and hopefully stay on the field.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the big message here is that you got to dig deeper than the metric that validates whether you think a school is good or not. You got to really start to understand what are some of those outcomes. What is that school going to provide you? Is it going to be a good fit for you from a social perspective? Is it going to be a good fit for you for what you're looking to pursue post-graduation? And you hit the nail on the head. Like, you can find this information. You can find what outcomes are, what starting average salary is, where people are doing internships, where people are getting jobs. Some of that is easily researchable on the old Google machine. Other times, a lot of these schools will have it on their own website. Additionally, like you can shoot those emails to, the admissions office, to the internship offices that these schools have, where they're helping guys get set up with jobs during the middle of the year, what the connections look like, what the alumni base looks like, how are they involved. But this idea that the acceptance rate is the kind of the end all be all metric when you start to look at the quality of the school, or the US News and World Report rankings. Well, this school's ranked higher than that one. I mean, when you start getting into those rankings, you're splitting hairs. Whose opinion is really different between the school that's ranked 21st in liberal arts and the one that's ranked 44th? Like,
yeah,
they're the same school.
The wild thing too is like it depends on what rankings you look at. Like one school's could be 20th on US World and News Report, and then you go to like niche.com and they're 40th. And the school that was 35th is on niche is 17th. Yeah. And vice like it, we're just throwing darts at a dartboard at that point.
Yeah. So dig deeper. Don't hang your hat on that metric. And I think it's important, and you said it, but I'm gonna double down on it. If you can get into these schools, great. If you're good enough to get into one of these elite, extremely low acceptance rate schools and you can afford it and it's a good fit for you, awesome. Go get it. We're not saying don't do that. But what we are saying is do your research, better understand exactly what you're going to get out of what you're looking for. College is super expensive, and you want to make sure that you're getting your bang for your buck and you're setting yourself up for your future, specifically if you have a decent idea of what path you're trying to take. Like the teaching one is a great example. Right? If you're a New York kid and you plan on living in New York and you want to be a teacher, going to a private school in South Carolina for twice the cost may not be the best decision for you in the long run. So think about this stuff. You got to dig deeper. Just like a lot of the recruiting process, you have to go below the surface level. You can't just focus on the things that validate whatever your opinion might be, and you need to dig a little bit deeper on this. Anything else you want to add, Coach?
No, sir.
All right. Thank you for listening to our TED Talk. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for listening this week. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and smash that like button for us. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at EMD Baseball. If you want to find out what me and Keith do to help families and players navigate the recruiting process, go ahead and check us out on emdbaseball.com. Take a few minutes to check out our new online academy. I promise you'll get some good information out of that. Thanks again for listening. Check in with you next week.